This is a kind of follow-up from the previous time. We had an interview a year ago. Brigadier General Sherman was kind of new in the seat as a director, and now Major General Sherman, and you have had over a year in the seat. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into some questions that we have from the field. Jeremy Delaval had a question about the initial strategic intent pushed out in late 2023 was centered around the new threat of China and Russia, as well as themes such as ACE, MCA, etc. But there's not really a mention of Iran, IRGC, ISIS, etc. His question would be is how do we balance our focus on the new threat with the current situation that's evolving in the Middle East?
Yeah, so to touch on that, I don't think you're going to see our footprint in the Middle East change much than what we're currently seeing right now. I mean, I think it's a given we're going to be there for a minute. We're in places right now such as Al Assad, and we have things that are still going on. We've still got U.S. operations that are obviously taking place if you pay attention to the news. You're going to hear about Iran. Iran is still part of that. It's still part of that near peer fight that we talk about quite often. You're going to see us shift our focuses away from getting into the counterinsurgency fights that we've been involved in for the last 20 years. That is not the future that we're looking at. We're looking at keeping pace with near peer competitors like China, like Russia, those that have like capabilities. North Korea has a nuclear capability. Iran that's got a significant capability to project power through the allies that they have formed to do harm against us and the people that we work with around the world. But I think you're going to totally see us change, and you're seeing it right now. I think there's going to be some huge announcements coming out of the building within the next 2 weeks of the direction the Air Force is going to get after ACE and that mindset. And for those of you that aren't as familiar with ACE as I would hope you would be, we're looking at a contested fighting environment. We're not going to have the days of setting up in Bagram or Balad or Shindan where we're going to project air power out of a large base. That's just not going to happen. It'd be a huge tactical error on the part of our competitors to do something of that nature to allow us to set up shop across from them and establish air superiority like we've been able to enjoy for the last 25 years. So contested means exactly that. We will have to fight our way into those locations to project that air power. That's why we look at small squads of defenders going out 13 and 26 person teams with support personnel to refuel, rearm, and do small maintenance things to our fifth generation fighters that are landing in the middle of nowhere in Europe, on a stretch of highway, on an island in the Pacific. And that's how we're going to have to fight the next fight. So we've got to be prepared for that. That looks nothing like we've done in the past. But yeah, you're probably not going to hear much about us talking about ISIS or us fighting the counterinsurgency missions that we have in the past. Our focus is not there. And honestly, I don't know that our return on investment as an enterprise would be there as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Chief. Going along with that, our readiness, ready to deploy. We had a couple questions about our recruitment statistics. Lance Hillenega and Christina Farah had questions about what are we doing as a career field to increase or retain our manning in FY 24 and 25?
So that's an interesting question, and thank you to those that asked it. So retention isn't an issue from the grade of E4 and above. As a matter of fact, we're manned out right now from senior airman all the way up to chief at over 100% for each one of those grades. Our deficit falls on the recruiting end of the spectrum, where we're manned about 35% for 3 levels worldwide. That is not a good number. Now, also keep in mind, that doesn't mean we don't have airmen out there, but what do we do when we get airmen? We start immediately working and upgrading them. So we've still got a lot of airmen out there, but they upgrade to 5 levels relatively quickly. So those numbers are jaded just a little bit. They're tilted a little bit. What are we doing to retain people? We're trying to give people opportunities. I've made sure that I've opened doors for people to train into K9 and to combat arms without it affecting their first term airman training status. Honestly, we've got a paradigm shift in the way that society thinks and works right now. We're asking people to come in and stay with us for 20 years when the reality is this latest generation has a tendency to stay somewhere 18 to 36 months and move on to the next best thing. It's a hard sell anymore to have somebody do 20 years and then we're going to take care of you on the back end of it as far as retirement benefits and things of that nature go. As far as recruitment pieces, I can't talk smart about that because I'm a defender. I'm not a recruiter. I'm going to leave that up to the recruiting command to figure that out. One thing I won't be a proponent of is continuously dropping standards. I never want to see us drop standards. I know right now our 3 levels going through the pipeline to 343rd, and we just graduated our first basic defender course. Those things are programmed for 104 defenders. We had 48, I believe, graduate out of the last class. So those numbers are not in our favor. It's going to be interesting how the DoD as a whole gets after this, because only 2 branches of the military this last time around made the recruiting numbers. And that was the Marine Corps, which is surprising to me, and the Space Force, which is not a huge piece of the Air Force, but it's sizable enough. But they all made their recruiting goals. For us, it's a little bit different. I think it's going to be interesting to get people in, because we've got to be able to tie the value of being a defender and what we provide to the Air Force as something that translates outside of the military realm. I think a lot of people are in it for what's in it for me. If I go and I get a vocation, it's all but a vacation. If I get a vocation in the United States military, what's it mean for me when I get out? How do I put this to use? Because reality is, as we continue to go more towards the base defense model, it used to be an easier sell for the recruiters. Used to be an easy sell for society as a whole. Come on to security forces. Come on to military police corps. And we're going to make you a law enforcement officer. And when you get out, it's going to translate into a job in the outside world. We don't necessarily work that way anymore. We look a lot different than we did probably 20 years ago. And we're going to look a whole lot different in the next 5. So it's going to be interesting where this goes. I think we've got to find a way to make this palpable for people to come in and want to stay through various methods. I'm not going to talk about finances because I don't run those. And the recruiting piece, I get phone calls all the time. What are you going to do to recruit people? Once again, I'm not a recruiter. We all have a uniform on, so we all represent and we can all tell our story. But as far as a recruiting strategy, I don't really have one in my back pocket. I'm going to leave that up to the subject matter experts in recruiting command to tell me what's going to work out for the generation that we're getting after today.
Okay. You brought up the new Defender course. There's not a whole lot of information that's out there that I've seen about there. Is there anything that you're able to provide about this new Defender course that you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'll say this for everyone out there that's like, oh, there's no law enforcement in the basic defender course. That's not necessarily true. And I'll also default only from experience, because I was the chief of the 343rd when we kicked off the last iteration of our 3-level course, our apprentice course. There wasn't a lot of law enforcement in there anyway. You're still going to get your basic searching and handcuffing, jurisdictional issues and things of that nature. What isn't in this curriculum is going out to what used to be Medina and now the Chapman Annex and doing the responding to a domestic disturbance where there's a lot of role playing and things of that nature. That's out. In reality, that's not what our brand new 3 levels are doing as soon as they hit the ground. This course has been developed around six tenets, and it is to be able to, it's going to sound boring to some of you, and some of you heard me talk about this many times. It's shoot, move, and communicate. It's be able to do and conduct mounted, dismounted, and perimeter defense. When I say perimeter defense, that means whether it's a tight squad 360 or if it's your base perimeter, we want you to excel at those 6 things. If we can succeed at those 6 things, we can do anything that the Air Force is asking us to do anywhere around the world for any job set that we have. So when we take that, I could have probably worked, and not just me, but our MAGCOM functional managers, I'll give a shout out to them too, because they help determine what the curriculum is going to be. We wanted reps, reps, reps. Shoot, move, communicate. Mounted, dismounted patrol, perimeter defense. Over and over and over again. Could have made it 8 weeks long. We decided to keep it at 13 so they get the reps. The other thing that really matters in this course is they're going to go to the range on 3 separate occasions other than qualifying on the front end of the course, and that's to do proficiency fire. Our airmen are coming out of tech school right now firing more rounds than most airmen did during a 6-year enlistment.
That's
and
great.
That is significant. It comes, absolutely. And it's significant. It comes at a cost. But at the end of the day, you're going to get an airman that truly knows the basics. Our goal is to be brilliant at the basics. All right, the 6 things I talked about, and being comfortable handling a firearm. Because when you think about it, we are the only branch of the United States Armed Forces that arms up daily, goes to work, stands post, works the patrol, all right, with a loaded weapon, one in the pipe, and that weapon system on fire. So if we're going to do that and we're going to post every day, we have to be comfortable with that weapon system and firing it. But just because we're patting ourselves on the back that we fired over 1,200 rounds, you're as proficient as the last time you went to the range, and we have to keep that in mind.
100%.
I heard, what warmed my heart is when I went and talked to the first graduating class just last week and spoke to them. They were excited about all the training they got at Camp Bullis. And the way this new course is set up, it is literally set up crawl, walk, and run. We teach them individual fire team skills. We teach them fire team skills. We teach them how to operate as a member of a squad and as a flight. And then they go out and they put all this together, and it culminates in a big field training exercise. They do a big ruck march, and they come in the next day and they graduate. So it all builds up. And I need to give a shout out to the 343rd. They did the heavy lift on all of this. And the schoolhouse, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, they are our subject matter experts. And I'm going to listen to them on what right looks like. And they've already come to me with some changes. Said, Chief, this is really great, but we think it should look like this. The course flow would be better if we did that. And I'm going to lean on them, and I'm going to trust them and the leadership team there and all of our instructors in the field to get this right. It's easy to sit up here in the Pentagon and come up with great ideas, especially when you don't have to execute them. But for this, we leaned on them. They told us what right looks like. And I'll tell you, if you don't have buy-in from the instructors and the staff that has to teach this, you've got nothing. Mm-hmm. Right now, we've got the buy-in, and it's showing with the attitude and the excitement that I met with when I talked to the graduating class number one. When team one graduated, they couldn't say enough about it. They enjoyed the training, and they loved that everything they were doing was building up to that big field exercise at the end of their training. So it's a win. It's shoot, move, and communicate. It is basic. There's a fourth thing in there too. I say shoot, move, and communicate, but that's follow the direction of your first line supervisor. So staff sergeants, tech sergeants in the field, they're going to be coming to you. They're going to be raw. They're going to be a piece of moldable clay ready to get after it. Don't squander that opportunity to take that airman and turn them into a contributing member of Defender Nation and let them know what right looks like, because that's what they're expecting from you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Going along, I had another question about manning. So Alex Johnson had a question about shreds, and was wondering, why can't shreds just be SEIs? That way unit commanders and squadrons can just send their people to school and solve their manning issues internally.
So this may surprise you. SEIs are the problem. The assignment system cannot see an SEI. The assignment system sees shreds. So I'll tell you a quick story. So combat arms, they've got a lot of my attention lately, and our MWD handlers are about to get a lot of my attention when I finish the combat arms situation. So we've been saying for about the last 8 years that combat arms is manned between 78 and 82%, and that's been true. So I also say we've been admiring this problem for about 8 years. All it took was a quick deep dive from Chief Blum, a shout out to him down at AFPC, Chief Barton out at IMSC, and the staff up at Headquarters Air Force with me to peel the onion back and look at this. We don't have a manpower problem with combat arms. We have an assignments problem with combat arms. See, in 1997, we brought combat arms over from the rest of the Air Force and brought them to Defender Nation. We treated them like every other defender on the street, and they PCS'd the same way. We currently have 430 combat arms instructors worldwide that are working in jobs other than combat arms. So what does that mean to you? It means that if I had the money right now to do a force leveling action and take those 430 and plug them in, combat arms worldwide would be manned at over 180%. It's not a manpower issue. It's an assignments process issue. Part of that has to be, we have to get rid of the SEIs. Here's where the SEI is killing us. Tech Sergeant Gallagher, all right, goes to the supervisor's course. I'm now a tech sergeant, so now I'm supposed to go get my SEI. I get my SEI, the assignment system doesn't see me. So we're currently working to take all of those SEIs for combat arms and convert them into 3PO 7-1 Bravo positions. The assignment system will see you, and a lot of people won't be excited about this, but this is an employment issue. This is a capabilities issue. This is getting defenders, and God knows everyone else is going to start utilizing our ranges because of RAT training, ACE, Afrigen, all these different models that are out there and have to get after it. If you're a combat arms person, expect to get an assignment to a combat arms position somewhere. Now, on the back end of that, we have to take care of combat arms, and that is, if they are going to do these jobs as a 7 level, as a tech sergeant, it may be a master, we have got to be able to reward them and recognize them for what it is that they're doing. It is not fair to penalize somebody to do what the Air Force has asked them to do and to go where they ask you to go to do that job and then penalize you for it. Because everyone knows, everyone gets promoted at the flight level as a flight chief or the op soup and all that kind of thing. We have to be able to take care of combat arms as well. So with that, I'm proposing we're going to change their duty title structure. Okay, we're not going to have any grand poobahs or the NCOIC of the broom closet or any fancy made-up duty titles we make up because we think it makes us sound different. We're going to set ourselves up differently. First of all, and this is in Cord right now, we're getting rid of the NCOIC of the Armory having to be a combat arms person. My NCOIC of the Armory is there for accountability purposes. I need you to have 10 fingers and 10 toes and know how to count. And if this kid could be an NCOIC of the Army and not get fired, you can too. Okay. We need to be able to do that. We need to trust our NCOs to be able to handle that kind of a job. The range is going to be the busiest place on the planet, coming real shortly. And a lot of people are already paying the bill for this. So I propose, and this is what we're looking at, and a guidance memo is about to come out with this. It's in Cord right now. It's actually sitting with SAF MR, who asked for 7 additional days to look at it. But your duty titles will be Combat Arms Instructor, Combat Arms Instructor Supervisor, Combat Arms Trainer, kind of what MWD has with a trainer position. And then you're going to have your Section Chief of Combat Arms. And that Section Chief is going to be responsible for all the range operations and my instructors and oversight of the Armory. Not running it, oversight. So if something comes up, they keep an eye on it. They make sure our commanders and chiefs and leadership teams aren't getting fired, and we're all doing the things we're supposed to be doing. But we've got to be able to recognize that. So once we do that, that's fantastic, right? We got a GM coming out. It's going to say recognize these people. We can change policy overnight, but it's going to take years for that culture to catch up. So there's going to be some people out there, and I fully understand, are going to have some heartburn. I don't want to be trapped on the range. At the end of the day, if you've got that B shred and we need you, okay, because right now I'm saying we're at the tune of 82% manned, but we need to be 100% manned. I think it's going to take about 18 months for all this to kick in. We're working the conversion right now on the SEIs and the shreds. All right, we will get healthy relatively quickly. And then we have to find a way to make sure that commanders and everyone else are looking at combat arms and appreciating what they do. Second piece of the combat arms piece is, well, like I said, the GM is out in Cord right now, and I talked about defenders firing defenders. We're coming to the end of the finish line on that one. They've got a JQS going on right now. I fully expect to see that no later than the end of February, and I would like to institute it beginning of March. Late March is the absolute longest I want to go with that, but defenders need to start firing defenders. Like I said, if we can carry our weapons in the configuration that we do, that needs to be simple NCO, senior NCO, core task. Basic rifle and pistol marksmanship is something you need to be able to do if you're going to be in this career field, and we're going to get after it. It doesn't buy a lot of time for combat arms, but it also gives them a phone a friend. So if you're at base X, all right, let's say I'm at Moody Air Force Base, and they say, you know what, we want to fire 75% of our base population because we don't know who Averagent's going to hit right now, and they want to get after it. We don't absolutely crush combat arms. They got some people to help them out with that as well. And I see more of those situations. No.
You brought up a good point about the culture change. There's previously been a culture of tech sergeants trying to claw their way out of the range in order to make themselves competitive for master sergeant. Be master sergeant, I got to show that I can run a flight, I can run LEOP security. What do you say to some of that mindset?
Well, if you're familiar, if you're out there and you're a senior master sergeant, if you're a chief or a master sergeant, you've probably heard me talk on this before if you've dialed in on any of our feedback sessions for vectoring. And that is, I come from the mindset is we need to appreciate you for the job that you're doing right now. I'll take it up to the senior master sergeant level and say, you're a senior master sergeant, you get to base X. If you're the second senior that shows up, chances are you're going to go to the S4 because somebody's working in the op suit position already. If you're both crushing it, why are we penalizing somebody? There was a time when we only vectored the person sitting in the ops superintendent position. Not only is that not fair, you might be cutting the legs out of somebody that's super competent. You have 2 rock stars on the yard, and you're penalizing one of them once again for showing up and doing the job we asked you to do. And we've got to get out of the mindset that you're only competent or capable if you work this particular job. Mm-hmm. That mindset's got to go. And it's got to be the same way for combat arms and canine. We ask people to train, and in some cases, give up their first-term airman retrain to retrain into combat arms and MWD, which to me is a bait and switch game, because at the end of it, we're going to use you up to you're a tech currently or a master, all right, and then we're going to return you to Defender Nation. That wasn't a retrain at all. Retrain is if you go to work for somebody else, public health, LRS, CE, Intel, cyber. If you go to a different career field, to me, then you've truly retrained. So it's kind of a bait and switch anyway. We need to value people and give them the chance to grow where they're planted. If you're doing a great job, recognize your people. We have got to get out of this mindset, once again, that unless you're doing operations superintendent job, unless you're the NCOIC of S3 as a master sergeant, you don't count. We've got to get out of that mindset. There's only so many flight chief positions that are out there. There's also back off positions. We've got to get out of that back office and people working the line going head to head against one another as well. Everyone needs to be valued for what they're bringing. And I'll say this, people know when they're bringing it. You know, every morning when you get up and look in the mirror, are you bringing it or are you not? People know that. They just need to be told that sometimes. And we've got to take care of one another. And that is valuing what we bring to the table. Too many times, like I said, we penalize people because they're just in a job that no one else wants to do or can do. Once again, it's a mindset shift.
Well, I appreciate that, Chief. Going along the lines with the conversation about shreds, Chad Bedard and Alex Johnson had a question about SUAS. We have potentially 5+ different systems out in the AOR, and want to ensure that we're setting up our defenders for success. Will SUAS become a shred out, or what are your thoughts on that to make sure that our defenders are proficient?
All right, so you're gonna get a Donnie G opinion on this one, okay? I've got some very strong feelings about this one. I've had some conversations here in the building, and as of late, I call it offensive defensive drone operations. I hate calling it counter SUAS and blue SUAS. It's offensive defensive drone operations. You know, if you're paying attention to what's going on in the world right now, that seems to be the way of warfare. All you have to do is pull up anything to read or watch on the Ukraine and the conflict that's going over there, and you will see what's going on with drone warfare. I don't think we've shown it enough attention. I think if it gets the attention that it probably deserves, and I don't want to speak out of turn or get out in front of my boss or anyone else, my personal opinion is I think that it's so important. It's not a shred out. I think it's on the AFSC. And I'm not necessarily sure that it's a 3 Papa that's doing it. I think it might be, and this goes with our base defense mindset, right? There's base defense, and base defense consists of so much more than security forces. I think cyber's part of base defense. I think intel's part of base defense. I think SUAS, blue or red, whatever you want to call it, offensive, defensive drone operations is so important. It probably needs to be its own AFSC. Wow. But I will say this. I think it falls under the Defense Force Commander's umbrella. All right. I think that it's one of those things when we look at our squadrons, and there's been all kinds of rumors about renaming squadrons and all that. Base defense squadrons, we go to that. That's based off the model that a base defense squadron does more than just security forces operations. It's embracing offensive and defensive drone operations. It's embracing the role of cyber. It's embracing technologies. It's embracing, dare I say it, AI, facial recognition, so many different things. We're just scratching the surface. But if you ask me, all those things fall under the future of base defense.
Okay.
So that. Shred, no, AFSC. I'm all lined up for that. I think you're going to see huge changes probably coming in the next 6 months. We've got to get after that. That is an emerging technology that, to be quite honest, scares the hell out of me. Because I don't think we're where we need to be right now. And I think most of those people that are out there in the absent theater or places where they've seen a lot of drone activity would agree with me. We need to be putting more money, more manpower, more emphasis on this as a career field.
Definitely. Even on open source, there's some very concerning videos out there for SUAS. So
absolutely.
David Gelker had a question. We kind of talked about it on the last interview, talking about the Tier 2 PT test. For the past 10 years or so, we've kind of gone back and forth, haven't had a definitive intent going forward. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, Tier 2 PT test, right? I'd say it was the bane of my existence, but this has been going on since about 2017, right? Also, lessons learned. We need to keep our eyes on our sister services. The Army went down this road and failed miserably to the point where they had to take a knee and start all over. They've had some congressional hearings about this. And I will tell you, here's what happened. From the last time I talked to you to today, here's what happened. I went down last January. I think it was shortly after our last interview, Mark, and we went down to write policy for Tier 2 PT. And here's what we ran into. They handed us a product. I was able to get my hands on some additional information. I won't go into too much detail, but some of the numbers were flawed. And at the end of the day, it was meant to be a genderless, ageless PT test. And when we boiled the numbers down, we ran into a this doesn't make sense problem. And I want to be very, very careful and very clear when I say this, because the last thing I want to do is offend somebody. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But, we've got the Female Defender Initiative. We're trying to lift up our female defenders. We lose them between the ranks of Tech Sergeant and Master, where they either get out or they go do something else. And we need to keep them around. We need that diversity amongst our ranks, okay? We can't just have a bunch of knuckle draggers like myself running around this career field. We need people to keep us straight, that don't look like us, talk like us, act like us. And I will say that we tested 1,200 defenders. Of the 1,200 defenders, 300 of those were females. 277, I believe, failed 2 of the modules on the PT test. This is not an indictment on our female defenders at all. That is, there was flaws in the test. If males can do this test and have no problems passing it, we can't have the same test, call it good for everybody, and have all but 13% of our females fail. First of all, I had to start asking some questions. These are tough questions to ask, and some people don't appreciate it when I go down this road. But the first thing I would ask you is, okay, what were we trying to get after here? Well, we were trying to get after physical fitness. We believe defenders need to have a different level of PT. Okay, fair. I'm down with that. I have no issues with that. Our problem is the Air Force does not have a PT program. And if you don't believe me, I'll challenge you. Call me. We'll have the debate on it. The Air Force has an AFI, and it says, here's what the PT test consists of. Here's how often you're going to take it. Here's all the different waivers you can have. Here's what happens if you fail it. Here's how administrative demotions happen. It tells us all the things about the test and administering the test. Nowhere is there a program saying, here's how you get ready for the test. Here's what comprehensive fitness looks like for you to pass this PT test. We just have a testing AFI. Our PTLs, what do our PTLs do? They get trained on administering the test. If you're lucky, some locations have the little deck of cards and all the little things we're going to do with push-ups and sit-ups and how many we have to do. That's cute. That's not a PT program. So we started looking at our sister services and how do they do this? Well, our sister services have things like, this is dated information. There's a new Army regulation now, but I'll just go back to my days when I served in a different uniform. They had Field Manual 2120, and it was the Army PT program. And the Army PT program showed you how to set up PT, how to set up ability groups, how to get people fit, how to do cardiovascular, strength training, endurance training, how to get after that. And they didn't have PTLs, they had master fitness trainers. And they would be trained on administering PT, everything from the extended rectangular formation. And if you've ever trained with the Army, you'll hear extend to the left march, arms downward move, and to get into PT formation. And then you would start stretching, and then you get into your PT, and then you might go for a run, and you might go on a run for ability groups. It was what you needed to do to get fit to take the APFT, the Army Physical Fitness Test. We don't do that at all. You won't find it. It doesn't exist. So we started asking questions. Well, if we want tier 2 PT, why are we having a tier 2 PT test? Because once again, we're creating a problem where we've done nothing to teach you how to get fit. We're just saying, hey, there's a new harder test coming up. And oh, by the way, we bought you some equipment, but it's golden calf equipment because we only bought you enough to test everyone. Oh, by the way, it takes about 25 to 30 minutes to test each individual that's being tested. And you can only touch this equipment to test people. Yeah. So unless you're training on that equipment that you're going to use, it's probably only available at the gym if they have some of the equipment, rowing machines and whatnot. All right. I don't think we were doing ourselves any favors. So we put the pause on that. Actually, we didn't put the pause on it. We said there's not going to be a test. The test is out of the picture. He said, well, what we need is a security forces PT program. What do we have for our forces right now? We've got nothing. So I'll break it down for you. Some of you have heard this before. I apologize. Just part of my traveling roadshow, right? But it's like, here's what Air Force PT looks right now. Your flight chief, Master Sergeant Gallagher, played high school football. So he knows what the strength and conditioning coach taught him about picking up heavy things, putting heavy things down, running, and doing some sprints. So that's what we do on Alpha Flight, right? Because that's what I know. Or you go to Bravo Flight, and Master Sergeant Gallagher on Bravo Flight, that dude's all about CrossFit. We talk about the workout of the day. We talk about upholding the rules of CrossFit, which is the number one rule of CrossFit. You got to talk about CrossFit. We're going to flip some tires. Okay. We're going to talk about the WADs. We're going to do all that stuff. That's how we get fit. Or worse, Charlie Flight. Master Sergeant Donnie Bag of Donuts doesn't like PT at all. So it's an individual responsibility. You guys go get fit. You got a PT test coming. That's where we're failing. So what we did is we went back to the exercise science unit, and I asked them to develop a tier 2 PT program. And when I say that, I mean physical fitness program, not a test. How do defenders get fit? What do we need to do functionally to get fit? So I just got the first draft from them about 2 weeks ago. I just printed it out. Quite honestly, I feel like it's written at the PhD level. I read it myself all the way through and thought, I don't know if there's any way I would ever use this if I could stay awake to chapter 2. So we're going back to the drawing board. There's not going to be a tier 2 PT test. We're not going to do that. We're going to create this PT program. And right now, we're not going to force feed it to anybody. We're going to give you tools for your toolbox. It'll eventually be posted. You'll have access to it. And we want to stand up a master fitness trainers course where we're taking people that would normally be our PTLs, and we're going to get them trained up on what comprehensive fitness looks like. How do we build these ability groups? How do we help our flights get healthy? And I'm not talking about stretching before, during, and after PT or during your work cycle. I'm not talking about SFTRG number 8, which talks about, what used to be like Defender's Edge, right? God, I haven't used the term in so long. I forgot the name of it. It's not important right now, though. Anyway, we're going to give you the tools that you need to have to go get fit and to have people in your unit actually take you out there and get fit. And if the end state is we're blowing the tier 1 PT test out of the water, hey, that works for me, because no one ever defined what the problem statement was we've been chasing since 2017 was anyway. And one last thing on that is you got to bring up fairness to this. If 35% of all defenders have a waiver of one type or another, and if you have a waiver, you can't take the tier 2 PT test. How does Airman Gallagher go out to post with Airman Smith? I look the same. I have the same equipment on. I'm carrying the same weapon system, but I got issues. So all they can do is measure my waist, because that's how bad my waivers are. But I'm standing next to Airman Smith, and Airman Smith's got to go take and ace the tier 2 PT test. Where's the fairness piece on that? How do you sell that to your airmen? You have to do this test, but you don't, and it's okay. And you got to breach a common sense barrier at some point too, and use some common sense. So we're trying to bring that into the fold. Bottom line, no tier 2 PT test, dead in the water. We're trying to put together a tier 2 program to launch to us, hopefully in the next 6 to 8 months. And all it's going to be is tools for your toolbox. If your units want to use it, you've got it. If you don't want to use it, nobody's going to force you to. We have a tier 1 PT test. Let's just get after it and see what happens from there. Because I'm tired of talking about it. And a lot of people feel like they've been promised things that aren't being delivered. And we're wasting time and spending a lot of money on something that hasn't come to fruition. So test is dead. Looking at a program to help us all out and help us all get fit.
Sounds good, Chief. Thanks for that update. Matt Mosher wanted to talk about, we have some great training going along at Bliss and some of these other locations, but we still have flight airmen working 12-hour shifts plus at the gate. And how do we sell that to our airmen when their counterparts, senior airmen A1C and LRS, comm squadron, working 7:30 to 4:30 and getting off base, and our guys are out there getting beasted, working 12+ hours?
Yeah, well, that's probably been a problem since 1947, right? At the end of the day, you chose security forces. We're a little bit different than everyone else. And I'll just say it. I don't think it's going to get any better anytime soon, because we like to talk about it. This all boils down to money and manpower. And I don't think we talk about it enough. Money, manpower, and recruiting. Because at the end of the day, if you've got no 3 levels, who's working your gates? Staff sergeants, tech sergeants. If there's no 3 levels out there, that's who's doing it. All right. And so let's have that hard talk. Let's just throw these numbers out here for you, which, a lot of people won't want to hear. A lot of people may not want me to talk about. And I'll just say this. Our career field right now is manned at 88.6%. That is the lowest since I've been in uniform. That is all indicative of us not being able to hold on to those E1 through E4s, some E4s, right? And the recruiting woes that every branch of the service has right now. It's tough sledding. It is tough sledding. It's projected to get worse. Our job does not go away. And as long as the Air Force continues the mindset of the only people that are going to handle a weapon system or security forces, I don't know how this gets much better. I can sell theories to people. When I'm at the ground level, I can talk to people. I can give people to buy what I'm selling to them. We've got to be able to explain to our airmen what's going on, be open with them. All right. Don't sugarcoat things. Things are tough for us. All right. We are in high demand all over the place. The entire United States Air Force is looking at security forces right now to help them through this transition. Because as the Air Force makes the determination that everyone's going to be a warrior. We're going to get after ACE. We're going to stand up air task forces. We're going to have the EBS, the MSTs, all these things that come with it. We are probably the most important piece to all that because it's already happening at bases all around the world right now. And that is defenders are already training people in skill sets that no one else has. We need to be able to explain to our airmen why the skill set they have is important. We need to be able to tie them into how you project air power on your yard. And if you don't have air power in your yard and you're at Maxwell or something like that, where you've got a flight line, but nobody's flying off of it, you've got to be able to tie them into the mission and the importance of the overall strategy of what's going on. We need to explain ACE, what it means, how it works. We've got to be able to break those things down. Our staff sergeants and our tech sergeants need to understand that. They're in a leadership role. That doesn't mean you get to be the lead person bitching about how things are on your yard. That means you need to be explaining to people why things are the way they are. Manpower is in a terrible position right now. I don't know how we make it better. I know we can do the best to hang on to people if we like. A lot of people think we should be paying a lot of bonuses and money and issues like that. We've been in a continuing resolution so long at this point for our money from the government that, I mean, we look at having our budget actually cut again next year. So, you know, there's been movements in the last 2 years to get rid of special duty assignment pay. So if they're looking to get rid of SDAP and we have to justify this annually and it gets harder and harder to do, there's no significant pays that are kind of come up. You know, I understand those significant events on the 1st and the 15th called payday, but just because you're a defender is not going to cross the threshold on why we should get extra money over anyone else. And in that example about, you know, it's hard to tell a security forces member, you know, why life's not fair because their suite mate or the person that lives next door to them in the dorms works for emergency management or works for CE or works for LRS and they have a 9 to 5, literally. We need to be able to peel the mission back and go, that's because we have to work 24/7. Nobody likes that. All right. We have to get it right every single day. Every interaction has got to be in our favor and we have to get it right. The enemy's only got to get it right once. And all we have to do is screw it up once. And we find ourselves on the front pages of newspaper. We find ourselves on CNN and Fox News and under scrutiny. And I can go into, I'm not going to, but I can go into Man to Bay. I can go into security things at Andrews. I can go into things worldwide. Mildenhall a couple of years back. That's why we're important. That's why we have to do the job. And if you think it's a cop-out answer, it really comes down to, do you have the ability as a senior NCO or an NCO to talk to your troop and say, this is why this is important? And just have the human, no kidding conversation.
Okay. I definitely agree with that. Definitely explaining to the airmen at the gates why their job is so important. No fail definitely does put it into perspective as opposed to somebody that's putting in work tickets on computers when if they don't show up, they're not going to get emails that day. It's not going to be a detriment to the base or the mission. So
I got something to add to that, Mark, real quick. So if I asked that question, I wouldn't be satisfied with the answer I just gave. I'd be like, that's great, Chief. That sounds super awesome. Nice words that you threw at me. What are you doing to make it better? Here's what we're doing to make it better, because I think you deserve to hear that. I think that's what you're really looking for. And that is, we're trying to desperately get after policy. Okay, 31101 is going to go from hundreds of pages to about 85. All right, where you're not going to get prescriptive instruction from the Pentagon saying you will, must, or shall do this to protect your yard. We're trying to put your commanders and your leadership teams in the position to do what we do when we go downrange. When you go downrange, if you got 100 defenders to defend your patch of land, you got 100 defenders to defend your patch of land. We like to say, if you post this, you must have X amount of people on the flight line. And if you post this, you must have this. You know, so all these different things we've done in the past, we're trying to get away from that. We want to empower our commanders and the leadership teams to go out there and say, work with your wing leadership, determine what right looks like, and defend your yard to the best of their ability with what you've got. There's not a whole bunch more manpower coming. Get creative, defend your yard. We're trying to get after it that way. The other thing we're going to get after is 2646 is going to be known as 104 here shortly. These are both in final chord, and it's your training. And it is, you know, the 216 mandatory hours of training that every defender had to do. That is going to be cut down to about 80 hours because those are the bylaws, and it is exactly what it said. By law, you must do this. And those 216 hours are going to become more of a menu, a catalog, if you will, of training that your command team, when they put together their annual training plan, they'll go look at it and do what you need to do to own the mission on your yard. All right. I don't need you all training on the exact same thing. If you're working nuke security, concentrate on nuke security and what makes you great at that. If you're down at Moody at the 820th, you concentrate on the tactics that make you successful. If I'm sitting at Ellsworth, I'm going to do the same thing. Do what you need to do on your yard to be brilliant at the things that you must execute to get the mission done for your wing, and concentrate on that. So we're trying to wipe away a lot of the fog. We're trying to take the handcuffs off, defend with what you have. That's probably the best thing we can do, is get the policy across the finish line. And I'll say this: if you're frustrated and think that it takes too long, I'm right there with you. All right. The biggest eye-opening thing for me in this job, almost 2 years into it, is how slow the wheels of change turn. That so many people get a say on what we as a career field do. So many people have to see the documents that we create. If it were simply as easy as going, we're not going to do this anymore, that's stupid. We're not going to post people on a flight line. That should be owner user. Mock can control the ramp. If something happens, let us know. We'll show up. If it were seriously that easy, we would have made those calls years ago. People before us would have made those calls. But we're trying to get it codified now to take those handcuffs off and really empower our leaders out there, because we trust you. We trust our leadership teams. Go make the right decisions. Work with your wing commander and make the right decisions, not just for your yard, but for your airmen. Because ultimately, I can come up here with a good idea, fairy stuff all day long. I'm not there on the ground with you in your fighting position.
Cool. I appreciate that. With 101 and the new 2646 and final chord, when can we estimate to see that roll out, a final product?
Hopefully sooner rather than later. I'm not going to put a date on it because it keeps getting pushed. Now, part of that is, too, we don't want to rush to failure on anything. We've got to do this right. I want to do this right. The general wants to do this right. We want to do it once, okay? And to put that information out there, because if we don't get it right, here's what's going to happen. People are going to be uncomfortable. And then the next thing you know, every MAGCOM out there is going to start writing their own supplements to the guidance that we just did. And we're going to write ourselves back into things we were trying to get out of. And we've got to be very, very careful about that. Because if we're taking the handcuffs on, we can't just take off the handcuffs and then slip flexicuffs on instead. All right. So it's got to be done right. Sooner rather than later. I'm thinking within the next 2 months, you should see something come in the form of a NOTAM. But much of this stuff gets hung up at different A staff levels. So it's not just security forces. Other people get a vote. They get to see what we're getting after, and they still have to go through coordination. So most of it has gone through coord. Now we have to adjudicate comments that were made and things that were red flags to other people. We have to go explain to them why this is the right answer. I hope that made sense.
It does, Chief. Thank you for that. Adam Rogers had a question. Has there been any consideration on officially splitting the career field? I know that's another one of those topics that keeps on getting thrown out there. You got combat arms, LE, air-based defense. He says at a minimum, this could improve specific training and readiness and morale, as some people join to be a cop and some people don't. It could also possibly give a better handle on manning slots. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally disagree with his manpower comment there. Rocker, my man, I appreciate the comment, but let me break it down for you this way. First of all, it all comes down to manpower. I think we all can agree that we don't have enough right now. The first thing everyone wants to talk about is the lack of manpower, or how we're short, or I've even talked about 35% worldwide manning in 3 levels, right? It's an issue. Here's another reason I wouldn't break it out. At the end of the day, it might be the right answer if we truly want to professionalize the LE piece to split it. We don't have the manpower to do it. We've got to be able to do both. We're still working on the LE piece and the professionalization, and it's taking longer than we want it to. And it's probably going to take more time. Honestly, we've got to see what they're going to come up with here in the next 2 weeks when the Air Force says we're not going to look the same. We're going to look completely different. And this is what we want you to do, security forces. So we've kind of wait for that decision and for them to slap the table. But if I were to take, and I've been asked to do this lots, you need to make combat arms separate again. It needs to be its own career field. You need to take MWD handlers and make them their own career field. You need to do the same thing with law enforcement. If I were to do that, the law enforcement career field would be between 5,000 and 7,000 people strong. Combat arms would probably hover around 750. MWD would probably be even less. That's fine if we had the manpower to pull it off, but I'll also caution you, if we did that, I really hope you truly enjoy that job, because that is all you're going to do from the time you enter the pipeline to the time you retire. And when you do retire, chances are you're going to retire as a 20-year staff sergeant, or you're going to retire as a tech sergeant.
Mhm.
Those would be career fields that would be so small. You'd be lucky to have a chief, maybe, to manage that situation. And the other thing is you just wouldn't have many opportunities. So a lot of times when I'm on the road, I hear people's frustrations, opportunities to promote. That's why we talk about vectors. That's why we don't want people getting stuck in combat arms or stuck in MWD. That's why we've got to change that whole mindset. But we could do it. I'm not saying Rocker's wrong. I'm saying we don't have the manpower to support it right now.
Okay.
And there was a reason that we brought everybody back together in 1997. I brought everybody together. We took law enforcement and security, and then we snatched combat arms from the base level organization and put them together. And that was because of manpower. I had the opportunity to actually speak to General Coleman a couple of months back, and he really broke it down for me in the situation he was in and why he did what he did in 1997. And that was to consolidate us to save that manpower. Otherwise, to be honest, if he hadn't done that in 97, we'd be hurting much worse right now. And we would have been hurting even more in the last 20 years. But great idea. Not saying it's wrong. If we had overwhelming amount of manpower and everybody would be Hakuna Matata with the idea of retiring a tech sergeant, hey, I'm all on board. It wouldn't affect me.
All right, appreciate that. Kenny Bish has a question about 5 and level CDCs. Any chance of them coming back?
No chance of them coming back. CDCs were, first of all, the very first time I took CDCs was February 2003. I got my first set of 5-level CDCs. And they were talking about things like the Scope Shield radio. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. What's a Scope Shield radio? Oh, that's something's been out of the inventory for 10 years. The problem is CDCs are unable to change at the speed of relevancy. All right. And at the end of the day, we also don't have any CDC writers assigned to us academically. They used to be assigned to 343rd. They no longer are. At the end of the day, it's called OJT training, on the job training. And as long as we've got your 797s, your 623s, and your CFETP, your new CFETP that came online, if you can train on those things right there, that's what the career field's asking you to do. Putting it into another publication and giving somebody another step, that doesn't really do much for you. But along those lines, I will tell you, because all the SFTRGs and the ETRGs have been rewritten, all right, you're going to see us go back to SKT testing beginning next year. Next year. And we're going to start writing our tests and working with Randolph here at the end of the year. SKT is going to be a thing again. And I think what's going to get everybody's attention is, I've been saying it for 2 years now, base defense. Our tactical base defense edge is what we're looking at. I would say expect your test to be shoot, move, communicate, mounted, dismounted, perimeter defense. That's what you're going to see. And it will be coming. It'll be coming next year. So if you got your CFETP out there that went live in July and you just transcribed and pencil whipped that business, you may have a really, really interesting surprise for you when you go to test next year.
Interesting. All right.
But no chance of bringing them back. No interest in bringing them back as an ECDC or anything of that nature. Not going to do it.
All right. Thank you for that. Got another question. It's not extremely security forces centric, but it goes along within the topic. Bradley Nendo had a question. If there's been any talks over in DC or big Air Force about bringing back WAPS testing for senior NCOs. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, right now I don't see any movement on it, but I got some opinions I would love to share with that. And this is just from my fighting position.
Sure.
That is, I'm a huge advocate for WAPS testing, period. End of story. The reason why is there is no reason now beyond the grade of tech sergeant that anyone cracks open a book or learns anything about the Air Force. That used to make us get into that performance fitness guide, the PFG, get in there and study that. We were studying it for promotion, but along the line, whether you wanted to or not, you were learning about the Air Force. Yep. And for me, having come from a different branch, I learned so much from the Air Force, about the Air Force, through testing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's great. You're getting credit for the jobs that you did. That's fantastic. I wish we all tested at every level. Some people are probably booing me right now. I think the test has something to do with your commitment and your buy-in to your craft. If you have to read and learn about our craft and learn about our Air Force as a whole, you know more. Right now, we give permission once you get tech sergeant, you don't pick up another thing and read it, especially if you don't have CDCs. All right. You're going to read a lot and you're going to figure out things thanks to SKT testing. But as far as Air Force heritage as a whole, history as a whole, the Air Force as a whole, and how I think we're missing out on a whole lot. Mm-hmm. I completely disagree. That's probably unpopular with some of my peers who are like, oh, we don't need to waste our time testing. I disagree. I disagree. It's part of the process. It's part of buying into our profession of arms in the United States Air Force. I wish that every single grade tested. I had to test. I was part of a generation because I've been a chief for a lifetime now, it seems like. I got promoted in 15. All right. But I had to take that test.
Mhm.
And I was learning stuff every time I had to study for it. And I think you should never stop learning. So big advocate for the test. I think they should bring it back, but I don't think they're going to ask Donnie Gallagher anytime soon.
Same here. I agree. Tested all the way up to senior as well. So, um, going along with heritage, our when we had our previous uniform, the ABUs, we had the SF shield on our chest. And when we were going over to the OCPs, there was a lot of ideas thrown around that eventually we might be able to incorporate the shield somewhere on our chest, and whether it looked like the Marine Corps or the Navy, how they have their shield. Can you tell us, is there anything, did that die in the water, or is that still a thing?
So the shield's not dead. Okay. So last year I did all the paperwork. We put out a note when they went out to the field about where you could wear your shield. You're never going to see it on the chest again. The reason you're not going to see it on the chest again is because OCPs. And when I say that, all you have to do is take a look at any of our female defenders. All right. If you're wearing a standardized uniform, all right, the male OCP uniform is completely different. The pockets are larger. All right, they're further out on her chest. The female ones are smaller. Their pockets are much thinner. All right. Plus, we have the ability to wear non-standard. I've got a couple of those Gucci uniforms. All right, and we've got some that have no pockets whatsoever now. If you have the hot weather uniform that's authorized, it has no pockets. This is the standard uniform. There's nowhere to put it where it's all the same. And the uniform board said no. So you may know it, you may not know it, but last year I went and did the footwork. We set out the general memo that you could wear the shield, okay, on your right sleeve. That's the one place you could put it and you could wear it. The deal is, though, your commander gets a vote. And if your commander wants his squadron patch on there versus your shield, that's what you got. And that was part of the deal that I made with Chief Bass when I was pushing this, because it actually went to the uniform board as it was going on. And they actually slapped the table, and the 3-star General Miller, the A1, approved it for us. So right now, that's what's approved. Now, there's a new 2903 that's going to be coming out here shortly, and we were able to write some things in there and some uniform changes you might see. Whether you agree with them or not, you may see this. We've written it in there unless somebody writes it out, and that is our combat arms instructors will be able to wear their red hat all the time. Why? Because they had a heritage, and they existed long before when we pulled them in 97, and we're going to recognize them for that. If we're going to ask them to go out and work that range all the time and they want to wear that hat with pride, we're going to give them the opportunity to do that. They'll also be authorized to wear the combat arms instructor patch on the right-hand sleeve. K9 will wear the Guardians of the Night patch. They'll be authorized to wear that on the right-hand sleeve. The other thing we're working on right now, who's written into there, is I don't wear the shield. Not that I don't identify with the shield, but as we get after the base defense thing, you'll see, and I'll show. I don't know if you can see it here, but I've got the Defensor Fortis patch in a 3.5-inch version, the same size as the MAGCOM that I wear out on the road to generate talk about base defense and the base defense mission. Now, some of you be like, "Oh, he's out of touch. He's not on board with the shield. He's not one of us." No, that's not true. One of the things you need to know about is right now at OSD, at the DOD level, there is some draft publication coming out when it has to do with law enforcement that clearly states the only people that will be authorized to wear a shield on their uniform will be those that are actually conducting law enforcement duties. So what I'm trying to do is prep the battle space. Okay, so if that does happen, we still have heritage items that we can wear, all right, and in a place that the uniform board would allow us to wear it. Okay. So it's not that I don't want to or anything of that nature. It's we were given a choice. That's what we came up with. People are authorized on their right-hand sleeve to be able to wear the shield, but your commander gets a vote. If your commander authorizes it, fine. If say, nope, you're going to wear a squadron patch, then you're going to wear the squadron patch.
Would you guys also propose not wearing the shield on the duty gear if they're not in that LE function?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I haven't given that part too much thought. Okay. I mean, not to make excuses, but we're working on 10 million things and juggling chainsaws up here with everything from the great power competition going on to what we look like in the future. That I've given a lot of thought, and we've run down a lot of things. And hats off to Senior Hinchcliffe, my deputy career field manager, who's been working a lot of this with me. We've been running a lot of that to ground, but at the end of the day, that's not the stuff that's going to keep us alive out on a contingency location doing freaking ACE operations. So some of that stuff is just distracting noise in the background.
Okay. I know you on a tight timeline, so I got one more question and then I'll leave it open to you for final remarks. Final question from the inbox was, what do you recommend senior NCOs do to prepare for the career field after 4+ years in a special duty?
Yeah. So I'll just go into this. I'll try to make this quick as I can. Due to manpower and other things, my stance on DSDs right now is if someone wants to do a local DSD, we're not going to say no. I'm not going to have a one size fits all blanket freaking policy. It's going to go based off what your manpower is at the unit level. And when I say at the unit level, that's not what your SEL thinks your manpower is. That's what the chief at AFPC, okay, that does security forces assignments, what he can see on his radar, because he can see who's moving, who's about to move, who's about to get orders, who's not getting orders. He sees all the things you can't see at the squadron level. If you're above 90% overall for your unit, number one, and by 90% over the rank that you are, number two, then you'll be released for a DSD. That's your PME instructors and things of that nature. One thing I've never shut off, and I'm about to have a meeting next week with the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force and Diamond One, the Air Force First Sergeant, is my policy right now, and this is all based off manpower. I need to be very clear. This is off numbers and manpower. If you are racked and stacked at your base as a Master Sergeant to go do First Sergeant duty, I will release you. All right. Here's what I will not do. In order to make that happen, no first sergeants that are out in the field right now are getting extended. I will not authorize an extension. You got to do your part, but you need to let other people go do that too. All right. And they've got a program right now, and I don't want to get too out in front of my skis, which is people can return from their normal AFSC to return to shirt duties because shirts are hurting. The meeting that I'm having next week is to say, I'm not going to be releasing anyone to return. The career field is hurting too bad right now. I will continue to support and give people the opportunity, but you don't get to leave and stay gone forever because it's comfortable for you and it's not defender work. I need defenders in Defender Nation. We're doing a lot of hard work right now, and I need those leaders in the field. So what do you do to prepare to come back? Keep your ear to the ground. Reach out to your MAGCOM functional managers. If you're on a yard somewhere in a special duty, there's probably a security forces squadron there. Hunt out that chief. Hunt out that senior master sergeant that's working and doing the JOB and talk to them about the change that's going on. And if that's not good enough for you, reach out to me. I'm willing to talk to anybody. All right? I'll talk to a fence post that wants to stand still long enough. I love talking about what defenders do. I love talking about how we improve the rest of the Air Force. And I love spreading Defender COVID everywhere we go. Every time we can infect the rest of the Air Force to think like security forces, that's a win for us. But to prepare to come back, you've got to be in the mindset that take that wonderful stuff you learned in your additional duty and apply it back to the rest of the career field. We let you go do something different. We let you spread that Defender COVID. Now I need you to come back, and we need to get a return on the investment we made on you. So we welcome you back to Defender Nation.
Awesome. Sounds good. That's all the questions I have, Chief. Final remarks from you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, first of all, Mark, thanks for doing this, right? I think this is the second one that we've done. We should probably do them more than once a year. And I want you to know, thank you for you and the team that run the website. I embrace you as an opportunity to spread information, and most importantly, for people to hear from the career field manager's mouth, right? Because there's a lot of rumors out there. There's a lot of rumors all the time. Ask your chiefs. They should know these answers, all right? Thank you for inviting me to do this. I really appreciate it. I don't ever want anybody to think that I'm snowing you on my answers. I'm going to tell you, what I know about the situation as I know it. There's no reason to cover anything up or hide things from you. And I promise I'm your biggest fan and your biggest advocate. It is an absolute honor for me to represent the enlisted voice of this career field. Okay. It is not lost on me the hard work that you do, the manpower that you're doing it with. So the pressure is really on me and the staff up here and our MAGCOM staffs and your MAGCOM functional managers to get this right with policy and guidance and to advocate and influence everything we can. But never lose sight of this. At the end of the day, you work for your groups and you work for your wing commanders. We are nowhere within your chain of command. We're here to help every way that we can. But don't think that just because something's going on in your yard that we can save you from it or anything of that. Although, like I said, I'm willing to make phone calls all day, any day, get a fight in the parking lot if I need to over you. Just let us know what we need to do. And don't expect any feedback from this, but let me tell you, folks, I'm proud of you. We are about to be more busy than we've probably ever been, with a lot of challenges. We are a hot commodity right now because we are about 2 years further than the rest of the Air Force is in embracing this ACE concept. It all started with DEFNEX 32, and it continues. If you're not embracing the base defense mission, you need to, because everything is changing that way. So if you're resisting or not wanting to change, it's going to be an ugly tide, because you're going to see that tsunami of base defense coming around the corner as we get ready for this great power competition. So, Mark, thanks for your time. Defenders that signed in, thank you so much. Your time is important. I don't like wasting anybody's. But once again, thank you so much for the opportunity. Proud of everything Defender Nation does. Proud to represent you. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Chief. We definitely appreciate it. I know the career field appreciates your candor and transparency. All right, Chief. Thank you again.
Appreciate it.